Our media product uses the forms and conventions of a real paranoia fiction through the use of mise-en-scène, lighting, camera, and sound. By looking at other openings such as Shutter Island and Sucker Punch, we gathered relevant camera angles as inspiration to use in our opening, seeing as the genres and themes of those openings link to ours. Similarly, in other openings, they use slow-paced editing and artistic shots to introduce the protagonist, which is where we got the inspiration to do the same. This is also where the inspiration for the soundtrack came, as Shutter Island is very slow-paced and eerie, which was purposely done to flow with the artistic shots as it makes the overall atmosphere of the opening very isolated. This is also why we decided to use Hammer Productions. Something that we noticed commonly occurred in the other openings that we looked at included a lot of close-up shots of significant items. This was common in openings that we looked at from previous year groups, where the female character is the focus as she gets ready to go out, which is what we wanted to capture in our opening through these close-ups. These introduced the character in close detail, which we thought was important, and made it look more like a real film opening. Although some film openings start fast-paced to exaggerate the horror or thriller genre, we wanted our opening to have the conventions of a paranoia. Therefore, the pace of everything was slow to focus on the atmosphere to make it quiet and eerie. We also agreed on the target audience being 18+, therefore we wanted to portray this by making it seem relevant in the rest of the opening, and although there is nothing as obvious as blood, we tried to enhance the more adult side through the use of scary music. Our media product represents particular social groups through mise-en-scène. Our example is our choice of costume for both of our characters. Carolina is shown to be wearing a light-coloured dress. We did this to indicate her innocence. She is shown to be in very casual clothing to help our protagonist fit into the target social group of young adults. However, Joshua is shown to be wearing all black, which makes him look very out of the ordinary and is shown as a stereotypical outcast of social groups. This helps to develop his character and make it very clear that he is dead. The fact that his costume shows him as an outcast makes him stand out from everyone surrounding him. Another example would be the choice of location.
We had chosen for parts of our opening to be done at the train station because this method of transport is commonly used by Carolina's social group and class of middle-class young adults.
Another way our media product represents particular social groups is through our storyline and genre. As our genre is paranoia fiction, it related to some social groups, as there may be some viewers within our audience that may have similar experience to our main character. Our female protagonist and the issues she has to deal with also represents different social groups, as Carolina is a 19-year-old girl that is moving into adulthood and is grieving from the death of her past boyfriend from over a year ago. Although she is grieving, she is still shown to attempt getting involved with things that are stereotypically done by people of her age,
therefore making it fit in with our media product in a number of ways. It is a French-based production and distribution company that owns the third largest film associated with similar to the audience of our opening, as includes young adults, teenagers, for distribution due to its genres, which our opening fits into, with films such as Flight and other more thorough films. The films that Studio Canal are associated with are well known, and this is something we wanted our film to have, rather than a small company-based film.
The way we attracted our target audience was implementing different editing techniques. We were inspired by one film, Shutter Island, which incorporated artistic shots in the opening. However, one particular scene is when Carolina is walking through the train station from a point-of-view shot. The audience will get a sense of her direction, hence why the point-of-view shot has been incorporated into this particular scene. Next, viewers establish a male character walking by to only realise it is a female bypasser, as this conveys the elements of psychological paranoia. Through cinematography and editing, we have internalized some media illusions, making this scene significant because the chosen target audience's mentality is much more mature than teenagers and young children. They can make assumptions as to why Carolina is paranoid, in comparison to teenagers who will start to believe that the male character Joshua has disappeared. However, this is not what we wanted to portray, because the first 10 seconds will hint out a brief idea of the storyline, which viewers aged 18 to 25 will identify quicker.
The preliminary task taught us a lot, as the comparison of the quality of it compared to our opening shows what we have learnt from other openings in many ways. One way would be through the use of camera angles and shots. The angles and shots used in our preliminary task were very unclear and did not frame everything properly. For example, when Amandev stood up, his head had been cut out of the shot, which looked very bad and didn't look very professional. Another example would be the opening shot of the door. This shot was very slanted and looked untidy as we had not set the tripod straight. Another way is the editing skills and techniques. The editing was very poor for our preliminary task, as when watching it back we can see that the clip did not flow very well. For example, for our opening shot we had shown the door opening and then cut to a wide shot of the main character opening the door and walking through. This looked very bad, as rather than the shot flowing it had jumped and made it look very untidy, which pulled the audience out of the story as it looked very unrealistic. We found that because we were restricted with rules on how the preliminary film should be, it stopped us from being creative and made it very basic and unimaginative with our shots. For example, the rule of the 180 degrees made our clip very dull, as we were restricted on the variety of shots we could have used.
As a group, we constantly kept changing the target audience, as it wasn't broad enough to reach out to an extensive audience we were aiming for. Eventually, our film opening, Joshua, was targeted at males and females aged 18 to 25. These young adolescents are more likely to watch Joshua mainly due to the content. For instance, because Joshua contains elements such as psychological paranoia and thriller, these types of films need to be watched by an audience with a mature state of mind, as the media aspects we have embraced would not appeal to those of a younger age group. To get our target audience, we conducted a questionnaire which was useful to get an insight to different opinions on the film genres. The sample was random, making this an advantage because we collected data from different people of all ages, genders, and ethnicities. The aim was to try and find out what genre most people liked and certain features that intrigued individuals into watching a certain film genre. Overall, we narrowed our target audience to males and females aged 18 to 25 with particular characteristics, hobbies, and interests. Likewise, genre preferences is determined on the basis of the individual's taste rather than their social class. That's why our social group is aimed at people from a working class and lower middle class background, seeing as both classes will participate in similar activities, which is to watch films and go to the cinema.
During the process of constructing our product, the film opening, we learnt the difficulty of creating our piece was very high in comparison to what we originally expected. The process was more complex than it originally seemed due to the timing and precision of the shots, as it had to flow and synchronize with the music, which resulted in our realization of all the implications that came with the editing process. Examples of some difficulties we faced were in the application of the sound. This proved to be difficult as the music had to synchronize with the shots we recorded without disrupting the flow of the opening. An example of a shot where the music had to synchronize was at the end as the train came into shot. The music had to lower in volume as the train went past and the voiceover was inserted. Further implications were revealed when our original ideas didn't work in practice, as we were not able to utilize the editing technologies to their fullest, or didn't take them into consideration, meaning that as a group we had to decide on an alternative ending, which we were able to edit. We also learned the editing process required a large amount of time in comparison to what we originally expected, as the editing software, Final Cut Pro, required delicate cutting and replacement of certain shots which would change the feel of the opening with every second we added or took off. This was done during the last scene, as a number of shots were inserted and replaced as they did not complement the rest of our shots, as well as adding and taking away time from our previous artistic shots at the beginning of our opening scene. We also discovered that camera work became much more difficult when we had to take difficult shots, as the timing of the shots and the movement with the shot had to maintain the atmosphere we were trying to create. The shot we are most proud of is a shot in which Carolina is walking in the train station, where Joshua briefly appears and disappears with the turn of her head. This shot proved to be our best shot, but also the most difficult, as it required very precise and timed camera movements.